The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
14:20 in the morning, 14 minutes and 20 seconds worth of sports talk to get you through your daily commute. Hot takes, recaps, best bets, and a little humor to get your day going in the right direction. Sit back, grab your coffee, and let's get into it. All right, 14:20 in the morning for this 13th day in November 2023. Today's show is brought to you by SeatGeek.com and the SeatGeek app. Use promo code 1420pod at SeatGeek.com today and save yourself $20 on your first purchase, whether it be hockey tickets, football tickets, whatever you're planning on going to. Get your Christmas shopping done now over there at SeatGeek and save yourself a couple of bucks. We all know how inflation, everything is going these days. Wow, storylines on the news. We don't talk about that kind of stuff here. 14:20 in the morning. Remember, we are part of the Belly Up Media Network. Go to bellyupsports.com to check out all their great articles and other great podcasts, such as The Corner Booth, Rise to the Occasion, Captain Luke Extravaganza, and my favorites, as always, the guys at Craft Brewed Sports. Always a good time listening to those boys. And thank you very much from all of us here at 1420 World Headquarters for listening to the show and watching on YouTube on a daily basis. We appreciate the boost and everything that we've been getting for the last while. It's been a lot of work put into it, but it's well worth it getting the entertainment out to the masses, I guess. Another week's gone by, another week's beginning here. A lot of new storylines around the National Hockey League. We'll talk about the Oilers fire a little bit in depth. The firing that happened yesterday, Jay Woodcroft out, Chris Knobloch in, and how much that kind of stinks a little bit. Like, did a little bit of a dive on some stuff that I didn't know about. Actually, I want to talk about it right now. It seems to me that that's becoming more and more after I did a little bit of reading yesterday about some different things. I realized some stuff. I don't do a ton of research for this show. Obviously, it's just more of a heartfelt thing. But I did a little bit of a dive yesterday, and I didn't know that Jeff Jackson was, who's now the CEO in charge of hockey operations for the Edmonton Oilers. I didn't realize that he was Connor McDavid's agent, and he was one who brokered the deal to make him the highest paid per average year, $100 million guy, and everything else in hockey history. I was unaware that he was the close ties that he obviously had to McDavid to be his agent, and now that he's the CEO of hockey operations, and pretty much the I don't want to say the man in charge, because that's still Ken Holland, but he's kind of the man in charge now, and it just smells a lot. Like I said yesterday, it kind of smells a lot that Knobloch got hired, but now that you know there's a tie there with Knobloch with Knobloch and with Jeff Jackson and with McDavid, it all kind of it's thinking a little bit even more. And then you think about the Connor Brown acquisition that didn't make a whole bunch of sense because he hasn't really done much. And he was kind of just one of those guys. He got a free agent contract and everything else. And with the Oilers, he's another buddy of McDavid's. It's kind of becoming the Connor McDavid show. Yes, every superstar in every league has that pedigree with their team. I understand that 100%. But it seems to me it's more so the Connor McDavid show, and he's not really living up to his end of the bargain. Yeah, he got 150 points last year, but this year he hasn't done a damn thing. In my opinion, he's the 100 and plus whatever leading scorer in the league right now. He'll get an uptick. I'm not worried about him, but like you look at the other guys who pull off this kind of crap over the years. You go to one LeBron James. At least LeBron James won some championships. Yes, he had to go down to Miami and get the decision, which stunk to high heaven as well. But how he was picking and choosing who was on his team, who was coaching, and on it goes. It reminds you a lot about what's happening now with the Oilers. And it's you look at that firing, and it still makes zero sense to me why they did it when they did it. I understand they had to go and find a coach. I guess they made a decision after the loss to San Jose the other night, but they let Woodcroft coach the game on Saturday versus the Seattle Kraken. But it just stinks to high heaven the way this thing is all playing apart, and it just doesn't it's not a good look for McDavid moving forward. He's become known as a coach killer already in his career. This is his fifth head coach in his 8-year career with the Oilers, and it's a really bad look and a bad scene, in my opinion, with what's going on there in Edmonton. You wonder what the other moves are coming and how much McDavid has a say in what goes on. Yes, I understand you got to ask your superstars, I'm sure, whenever there's a big decision made in Pittsburgh. Sorry, they ask Sidney Crosby, and I'm sure when there's a big decision that to be made in Colorado, they go out and they ask McCarr and McKinnon what they think of things, not to be the final voice of things, but just to have this situation. But the thing is with those guys, they've won championships. They've done it all before. They have rings on their fingers. McDavid doesn't have any. So to have be on their fifth coach in 8 years, it's starting to stink a little bit more and more. So this might be the year where they better get something done, or the crowd's going to start to revolt against McDavid a little bit, because people have very short memories, right? It's what have you done for me lately, no matter what in the world of sports. But with McDavid not producing a championship, and yes, they've lost to the eventual Stanley Cup champion the last 2 years in the playoffs, but to have a situation there in Edmonton where they haven't won anything, and he's making the decisions, it looks more and more like Connor McDavid's making all the decisions on who's even getting hired, which is completely ridiculous, and whose free agents are coming in and everything else. For McDavid to have the appearance, I'm not saying that he does, but it's the appearance that McDavid's making these decisions. And you wonder if his teammates are like, who the hell's this guy? He's just another player like the rest of us. Like, yes, he's an unbelievable talent. He's a generational guy, best ever, and all the things, like how much we talk about the guy. But you might think his other teammates. This is completely hypothetical. I don't know. Obviously, I'm not on the inside of the Oiler Nation and the what goes on in the boardroom, the locker room. But it's starting to look like a duck and smells like a duck. It is a duck. And this one situation, I think McDavid really better do something. He better turn this team around. He better turn his season around, or else the faithful up in Edmonton are going to revolt, because that's how they are up there. And they're a great hockey town. They got knowledgeable hockey fans. But you know what? What have you done for me lately? And the 97 jerseys might get thrown on the ice sooner rather than later if they don't get something done up there. It's just, it just stinks. Another thing I want, that's news and notes of the week coming up, National Hockey League tonight, the Hall of Fame inductions happen out there in Toronto. Henrik Lundqvist, Carolyn Ouellette, Tom Barrasso, Mike Vernon, Pierre Turgeon, Ken Hitchcock, and the late Pierre Lacroix are all getting the call into the hall tonight. It's all the Hockey Hall of Fame conversations are always quite enticing and quite easy to get people riled up to one side or the other. I agree with Lundqvist and Ouellette. They probably should they get in. Lundqvist probably the best goalie of his generation. You don't know, he didn't win any championships, but he's the 2014. He came real close, losing to the LA Kings in that great series there with the Rangers. But you wonder what's going to happen, like with these other guys, like, and Ouellette is 100%. She should have got in her first. She's an all-time great in the women's game, one of the best ever to play for Team Canada and the like. So that's a no-brainer that she's getting in. But the other guys, I'm not exactly 100% sure of, and I've never understood why guys get into the Hall of Fame, or girls, years later, after years of eligibility and everything else. It's an easy conversation to have, because I've always wondered how guys get better as the longer they're retired. They don't. It's either you're a Hall of Famer or you aren't. Maybe 2 years of eligibility. If you have, like, who cares if you have 10 or 15 guys voting or get voted in that night, and then you have a bunch of speeches. Start them earlier in the day. I know there's TV constraints and everything else. Put it up on YouTube. Who cares? If you're going to watch it, because you're not going to watch a player you don't know anyways. Like, I might watch tonight when it's on. I might talk like the Mike Vernon thing, or I might, because he's a Calgary guy, and there's some ties to when he snubbed the Lethbridge Broncos back in '83 to not play for them. He went and played for the Portland Winterhawks in the Memorial Cup all those years ago, 40 years ago. God, it's hard to believe. But so I might watch that one. But in general, when people watch the Hall of Fame inductions, and most people don't, they'll watch the player that they grew up watching, or they're a fan of that team, and then that's it. So why they need to shorten the video content, the on-air content, the TV, is kind of a mystery to me. They have it for 8 hours and put 10 guys in the Hall of Fame, put 15 guys in the Hall of Fame. Who cares? To have to fill spots because you want X amount of guys going in, year out. Either you're a Hall of Famer or you aren't. I don't think that Pierre Turgeon's a Hall of Famer. I think he's a Hall of really good. In fact, a Hall of good. I don't know if it's really good even. He put up some big numbers, but everybody's putting up big numbers back then. He was a really good player on some pretty bad teams, like with the Islanders there. He had one good year, and then when they beat the Penguins, I think it was 93. That's 30 years ago now. So, like, how these guys get better, I don't understand. Like, Mike Vernon's a good, serviceable goaltender. I don't think if you remember a few months back, we had Canter, Dave's cousin, on the show, and he's a big Mike Vernon apologist. So he was kind of talking about that. Vernon's in for sure, and I think Vernon's good. Tom Barrasso, his pedigree or his stats, like, he won a Calder, he won a Vezina, he won a few Stanley Cups with the Pittsburgh Penguins. That was also back in the 90s, obviously. So how these guys 30 years later become Hall of Famers. I know that Barrasso was, I think he was kept out a long time ago for his not being very nice with the media. He was kind of a bit of a, well, said he was, it's 10:40 in the morning here at 1420 World Headquarters. So it's going to be my first swear word of the day. He was a bit of a dick to the media, and that's who votes guys in, right? So that's why he wasn't in for the longest time. But if how he got better over the years, maybe that's something that Hall of Fame committee has to look at too. That if a guy is a bit of a dickhead to the media or whoever, that shouldn't affect his voting privileges or getting voted in. Because if you're it's the on the ice product what you got, and if somebody gets their feelings hurt a little bit, it shouldn't matter a whole bunch if a guy is great or not with the media. The other, like, it's just I don't know how much I like the Tom Barrasso one going in now. I know I don't like the Vernon one going much now. The guy that gets in for sure to me is Ken Hitchcock. He's one of the all-time greatest coaches. Goes back to those days in Kamloops with the Blazers, and then moving on and everything else that he's done with the Dallas Stars. And he just was a great coach. And he was another one that got killed by McDavid out there in Edmonton. So that's a good one. Pierre Lacroix, he fell into a bit of a pool of hot butter, I think, with the Colorado Avalanche when they made that trade in Quebec for Lindros and all those players that ended up going trade for Lindros with Philadelphia. You remember that trade back in, it was 91 draft. That all happened when Lindros decided he wasn't going to play with Quebec, and they ended up getting Forsberg, and the rest is history with the Quebec Nordiques and Colorado Avalanche franchise history. But he put a team together, and I don't know if managers should get in there, because sometimes if you got deep pockets, you don't look like a pretty good manager, like Kenny Holland out there in Detroit when he was there. Now he's in Edmonton. Look at that disaster he's got. So these managers should get into the Hall of Fame. I don't know for team building. I don't much get it, because if you can spend your way to the top, you can also spend your way to the bottom. There's no getting around that. But you can spend your way to the top and get to the Hall of Fame just because you have a owner with deep pockets. I don't know how much I like that, because you look at those Detroit teams that were winning Stanley Cups year in, year out against Colorado. They didn't mind spending money. So it's one of those things. You look at that and you just wonder why these guys get in the Hall of Fame, just because they might not have been the smartest GMs, but they had the deepest pockets for owners. So it's Hall of Fame's always great. Like, it's always a good conversation. Guys get in. I mean, you're not going to besmirch a guy for getting in the Hall of Fame. There had to be obviously very good players to even be considered to get in, but there's some guys that I think get in because there's a bit of a bias maybe going on. Vernon, he won that Stanley Cup with Calgary in '89. 3 or 4 big saves in that Game 7 overtime in the first round against Vancouver. So maybe that gets him in, just that big performance. And Lanny McDonald's a Hall of Famer, and Lanny says he should be in. He was the reason why they won that Stanley Cup back in '89. They had a really good team in '89, so I don't know. And then his other one with the Detroit Red Wings and Conn Smythe Trophy and the like. So maybe Vernon's in, maybe Barrasso's in. I get it, but Turgeon, I don't think he's a Hall of Famer. Hall are really good, and that's about as far as that goes. Next thing I want to talk about is the coming up later on this week. I think it's November 16th to 19th. Next weekend it is. Detroit, Ottawa, Minnesota, and Toronto are all they're flying over to Sweden to take part in the global series. My question is why. I understand you want to try to grow the game a little bit, and hockey's been trying to do it forever. I don't know why you would go to Sweden of all places to try to grow the game. I would say per capita, Sweden, which a lot of Swedes end up playing for Detroit, being very successful. But Sweden is probably per capita the second biggest hockey nation in the world. So going to a country like Sweden with the National Hockey League makes zero sense to me. It's not growing the game anymore. It's not doing anything, but I don't think you're putting any more eyeballs on it. I think you're taking eyeballs away, because some of these games are starting at 2:00 Eastern Standard Time. Check your local listings. That nobody, like, so you basically have a fan base on Thursday and Friday who can't watch the game, and then there's games at 8 a.m. Eastern on Saturday and Sunday. So there's games that people who are fans of these teams aren't going to get up to watch. Like, if a game's at 8 a.m. Eastern, my brother-in-law, he won't be getting up to watch a Leafs game, I don't think, at 6 in the morning on a Saturday. I just don't see that happening, or whenever his game is. Like, but you guys know what I'm getting at. It doesn't make sense to me to alienate the fan bases you already have throughout the National Hockey League, and to say, you know what, because they're having trouble enough growing the game around here. Like, attendance numbers aren't great in some cities, right? And to have these games being played when people can't watch it or won't watch it is the biggest thing. It doesn't make a bunch of sense to me to have to go to a country that's as big as it's going to get for the hockey world. If you wanted to grow it over in I don't even know what country. I'm not a geography major by any means, but yeah, I think you understand what I'm saying here. There's some countries that you could grow the game in a little bit, but there's some countries that aren't. That this is what it is, and I think Sweden is one of those countries that this is what it is. It's immensely popular already. They're a hockey power. They're one of the top 4 in the world year in year out when Olympics and World Championships and everything else. So I don't know what you possibly think that you're doing by sending these games over to Sweden. And like I said, I think you're alienating your fans in North America a lot more than you're helping grow the game over in Sweden, which it has its own league, it has its own junior leagues, it has they're hugely successful when they host World Championships and World Juniors and everything else. I don't understand the logic, and if somebody wants to fill me in there, email me at 1420sports@gmail.com, because I do not understand what the point of all this is. It makes zero sense to me. Why we talked about it with Jim and the Fan of the Van, and Dave and I talked about it last week with the NFL, how they start these games in Germany at 7 a.m. and 7 o'clock Mountain Standard Time, which is 6 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. And so who's getting up to watch that freaking game at 6 a.m? Nobody cares that much. Well, people care that much, but yeah, you think you understand what I'm saying. It just doesn't. It kind of stinks a bit to high heaven in my eyes, and it doesn't make any sense to me. And lastly, before we get over to birthdays and everything else, don't look now, but those Boston Bruins are 11-1-2, and they're rolling again. They had overtime win last night, and they got a hell of a hockey team there in Boston once again. Could come up with what they had last year going on with their record-breaking year that they saw 120 some points. 130 points, whatever it ended up being last year, but losing out in the first round to the Florida Panthers in that Game 7 thriller. It's just funny that you have a team that's rolling again, and they're doing everything they can to win again, and they look like they're going to be great again. And they like Bergeron retired, and Pasternak's still flying. You still got Marchand being Marchand out there, but they still got a great team. They got great goaltending there in Boston. But the thing that I find funny about the Boston Bruins is that nobody cares, right? Nobody's talking about them being one of the best teams in the league, being one of a Stanley Cup contender, because this group, it's changed, but the core has been pretty much there. They just replace, regroup everything else year in, year out. But this team hasn't done anything. They're the one Stanley Cup championship in 2011 versus the Canucks, and you just wonder, does anybody care? Or does anybody worry about the Boston Bruins when it comes playoff time? Because they've proven year in, year out that they just can't do they can't do anything. I don't think they scare the big boys. I think the big boys in hockey right now are the Vegas Golden Knights. I think the Colorado Avalanche are right there, and then you have a Rangers team who was really good. But is anybody scared of those teams? It seems like the Western Conference is the big boys. They play a different game. They play a little bit heavier hockey out this way. I'm not saying that they're better. I'm just saying it just seems like they play a little heavier hockey. Look how good that Los Angeles Kings team is too. Like nobody, I don't think anybody's scared of the New Jersey Devils. I don't think anybody's scared of the Boston Bruins. It's just kind of one of those things you look at it and go, okay, what the heck's going on here? Because 11-1-2 at this stage in the season, that's pretty damn good. Like you're cementing yourself a Stanley Cup playoff chance on the 13th day in November. So it's just interesting to see these teams getting off these great starts, and nobody really notices or really cares. Because Boston, they're just there every year, and people get used to it, but they're also used to them not doing anything in the playoffs. And it's just funny how it all plays out that way. Because if it was like you look how great the Canucks are 10-2-1 or whatever they are, and everybody's saying these guys are contenders. Like they're and Vancouver's never done anything. So it's just funny how two different fan bases or two different parts of the country and two different parts of North America and two different parts of the hockey world see what a record is, and they take their own, they put their own spin on it to see how it all works out. So it's just interesting to how the hockey world can look at different teams and different things. There's the what's going to happen this week in the week the world of hockey. It's going to be an interesting week, interesting season coming up. Got some guests coming up. Old Jakey's lining things up as we speak for us to bring some other guys on at 14:20 in the morning, so you hear some other voices, not just mine rambling through my eardrums. Now, as you're on that, make sure you go to the 1420sportsbar.com to check out all some great articles and listen to some everything 1420 related is right on there. Our merch store, links to all our shows, everything else that's right on there. Some articles, and Redlinski's Ramblings is on there. We put it out every Friday, so make sure you go and check that out. We appreciate everybody who does that on a daily basis. There's a lot of work goes behind it. We enjoy doing it here at 1420 World Headquarters. Here is a word from our friends over at SeatGeek.
SeatGeek is the ticketing app for fans like the High Five Strangers guy. Game-winning interception, first down, just a nice solid tackle. If you're in arm's length, you will be swapping skin with this extrovert. You see, he knows SeatGeek got him a great deal on tickets, so he can focus on what he does best, smacking palms. SeatGeek handles the tickets to sports, concerts, and more, so fans can fan.
There it is. Remember to go to SeatGeek.com, the SeatGeek app, and use promo code 1420pod at SeatGeek.com today and save yourself $20 on your first purchase. Thanks very much for SeatGeek for being a sponsor and longtime sponsor of the 1420 Sports Bar podcast. Here we go on this days and birthdays. Get you guys out of here. On this day in 1997, Ken Griffey Jr. of the Seattle Mariners unanimously wins the American League MVP award. Griffey hit 304 with 56 home runs and 147 RBIs on the seasons. That also saw him win a Gold Glove and a Silver Slugger award in a season that saw the Mariners win the American League West with a record of 92-70 before losing the Baltimore Orioles 3-1 in the American League Division Series. Griffey would match his home run total of 56 again in 1998, which would stay as his career high. The 97 MVP was also the only one of his Hall of Fame career that saw him play in the All-Star game in 13 of the 22 years he played in the major leagues. Ken Griffey Jr., one of the sweetest swings in baseball history. The kid, as they called him, he was an all-time great. You wonder how his career would have, if he would have just stayed in Seattle and the injuries happened when he ended up going over to the Cincinnati Reds, and they put Chicago, that little cup of coffee he had with the Chicago White Sox. You just wonder how it all would have played out for Griffey. He was obviously like one of the best to ever play the game. There's no getting around that, but you just you wonder how like his you just wonder, like, winning a championship that obviously cements you to your history. But Griffey, man, that the smile and swing and the swagger he had, and he just revolutionized the game a little bit, and he made baseball fun compared to the growly old boys club that used to patrol the fields and managers and stuff. Yeah, just crazy. Like, Griffey was just, that smile and the way he played was just phenomenal. And let's go to happy 60th birthday to Heisman Trophy winner Vinny Testeverde, born on this day in 1963 in Brooklyn, New York. Testeverde played his college football at the University of Miami, who he played for the Hurricanes from 1982 to 1986. And as a senior, he'd win the Heisman Trophy after throwing for 2,557 yards and 26 touchdowns. Testeverde was drafted first overall in the 1987 draft by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And needless to say, things didn't go so well for Testeverde. In his second season, he struggled heavily with a 47.6 completion rate and 35 interceptions. Testeverde became a journeyman in his career, making stops in Cleveland, Baltimore, with the New York Jets twice, Dallas, New England, and Carolina, throwing for 46,233 yards and 275 touchdowns and 267 interceptions. And on May 7th, 2013, Testeverde was inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame. Happy birthday to Vinny Testeverde. Yeah, he's one of those guys. He stuck around forever. Hauled it pretty good. Like, he threw a lot of interceptions, kind of a laughing stock and everything else. But he was a hell of a college football player, obviously. Those great Miami teams back in the 80s, how they just reloaded quarterback after quarterback after quarterback. And then the U, and everybody knows all the story about those teams that were winning national championships. I think Testeverde lost to Penn State in 86 or 87. Just didn't quite get her done, but that doesn't much matter. Anyways, there's 14:20 in the morning for this Monday. Make sure you guys check out our other shows throughout the week. Just put us in your ears, binge watch with lots going on. Tonight, me and Dave will do our usual Monday night recap of the NFL Week 10, I think it is now. So we'll do that. Talk about things going on. We got a friend of the show from Aaron from Brutally Honest Sports coming on to join us there. So that should be a lot of fun. And his co-host Joey House will be joining us as well. So that should be a lot of fun, having a different set of different voices for that team and everything else going into Week 10. Wrapping it up tonight. So make sure you guys check that out when it's out tomorrow. And thank you very much for everybody listening to the 1420 podcast each and every day. And remember, it doesn't matter where you are. It's who you're with. And we'll talk to you tomorrow. You just listened to the 1420 Sports Bar podcast. 4 beer with the sports, talking a whole lot more. We are part of the Belly Up Media Network. Let's get it.